Hello, and welcome to Warhammer 40k's Grim History from the Beyond. I'm Zekthar.
And I'm Yuxin.
And we are the chroniclers of all that was, and all that will be in the 41st millennium. We've seen the rise and fall of many empires, and this month we will be discussing the backbone of the Imperium of Man, the Astra Militarum.
Indeed. And this week we will be discussing the heavy guns of the Imperium. Those mighty tanks and other vehicles they ran into battle. Now, do keep in mind, this week we got a lot to cover, so bear with us if we go long.
Correct, brother. But before we get started, we should probably discuss the most famous and recognizable weapon of the Imperial Guard, the Lasgun, or Lasrifle, so to speak. Now, real quick before we get to the bigger gun, the Lasgun, also referred to as the Lasrifle, is a directed energy anti-personnel weapon that has a longer range than a las pistol, but is nowhere near as powerful as a las cannon, nor does it possess the rapid fire quantities of a multi-laser or the Hellgun. Though not as powerful as kinetic projectile weapons such as the bolter, the lower cost of production, the lack of requirement for ammunition production, and resupply make the lasgun the best choice for the large forces of the Imperial Guard. The lasgun uses a small portable capacitor power pack to produce a focused pinpoint laser beam, which is strong enough to take an ordinary human's arm off with one shot, but is not as effective against more durable alien bodies and the stronger types of personal armor. A Lasrifle's beam also cauterizes the wounds it inflicts due to the immense heat given off by the shot. The lasgun is effective when used in mass, but considerably less effective when used by itself. The lasgun uses the same basic technology and operates along the same lines as other laser weapons, emitting a beam of highly energetic, focused, coherent photons. The high amount of energy carried by the photons of the beam causes the immediate surface area of the target to be vaporized in a small explosion. It is a relatively unimpressive weapon when compared to many of the other high-technology weapons available in the galaxy. But it is capable of cleanly severing limbs, like I said before, and potentially even piercing the power armor of a space marine, but usually only through a vulnerable spot in the armor. Most lasguns designs have iron sights mounted along the top of the weapon. It is powered by a small rechargeable pack located beneath the weapon and in front of the trigger guard, which can be recharged in a number of ways, including by sunlight. See, Yuxin? The Imperium is actually eco-friendly. If it wasn't for all the tanks that they were rolling with and all the other gas guzzling stuff that they do.
Or the, Hive Cities and the worlds run by the Adeptus Mechanicus.
Yes. But remember, with the Lasrifle, they went eco. But anyways, these power packs can also be overcharged, a trick used by Imperial Guard veterans, which causes the pack to explode, turning the weapon into a makeshift grenade. This target is only used in last-ditch situations, as it results in the destruction of the weapon. Lasguns have numerous power settings for adjusting the power of each shot and to conserve power, unfortunately resulting in weaker laser shots fired. The weapon can be overpowered with a hotshot laser capacitor pack, providing more powerful but fewer shots. The lasgun mounts a bayonet lug, allowing the weapon to be fitted with bayonets or combat knives. The sniper variant of the lasgun, known as a long las, is the preferred weapon of the Imperial Guard's sharpshooters. The barrel of the long las is extended to bolster the weapon's accuracy. The barrel requires replacement after 20 to 50 shots, depending on the power setting and the cooldown time. For this reason, the long las is outfitted with a slide lock barrel, which is easily locked and unlocked from the weapon's housing. Now, Yuxin, for those that are listening in Terran 42, this is not often used for like sniper rifles, but for like heavy machine guns or machine guns like the SAW, normally, or the M60. That's probably the most classical term anyways. The barrel got so hot, what ends up happening is that it would start to bend, in which case they actually designed it so that you could pop the barrel off and snap a new one into place. Very much like the long lines that we're discussing here.
Okay.
Anyways, the standard lasgun pattern used by the Imperial Guard is known as the M35 M-Galaxy pattern. First, put into use in 2546.789.M35, although thousands of variant models, marks, and patterns exist. The Canadian shock troops, for example, commonly bear the M36 Cantriell pattern Lasrifle, originally manufactured on Cantriell, as the name suggests, which is a weapon known for its sheer robustness. Despite these variations, the many mechanisms of every lasgun remains the same in almost all regiments. This makes the logistics of supplying multi-regiment armies a much simpler matter for the Departamento Militarum. Other variants of this weapon include the more compact las pistol, the anti-armor las cannon, and the more powerful and expensive hell gun. The Imperial Standard las gun, as used by most of the regiments of the Imperial Guard, has many attachments including, but not limited to, several types of scopes, bayonets, laser sights, and flashlights. The las gun and las pistol are weapons generally meant for dealing with lightly armored infantry, and thus lack the brute power of more advanced weapons from the Imperium's arsenal, like bolters or plasma guns. This has led the weapon to be scorned by some of the Imperial Guard soldiers and officers as a flashlight. But the las gun excels at mass volley fire. A hail of las shots from dozens, if not hundreds of las gun barrels can stop the charge of hordes of lightly armored opponents like Chaos Cultists or Orc Boys dead in their tracks. Concentrated las fire upon even a very powerful single armored target can eventually overwhelm the target's armor. Despite its lack of damage output, though, the las gun remains a favored weapon of the Imperial soldiers, for it has many redeeming qualities. It is a solid and rugged weapon that remains reliable and precise in almost any environment and requires very little maintenance. A quick cleanup while mumbling a prayer to the weapon's machine spirit after usage is all is needed to keep it going for over 10,000 shots, after which the focus crystal must be replaced, an action that requires the intervention of a knowledgeable tech priest. Another redeeming quality of the las gun is that its power pack can be recharged by exposure to sunlight or by being put into a campfire for a few minutes, ensuring the weapon almost never runs out of ammunition, even on prolonged operations or in situations where resupply is highly unlikely. Now, real quick, before talking about this humble yet very important weapon, I believe a demonstration is in order, brother.
Really?
Yes, absolutely. Now, what I've brought today is the standard MG short pattern Lasrifle, which is the standard for all Astra Militarum troops. Now, before you say anything, I know I said there are many different variants used by different folks in the Imperial Guard, but this is the standard. Now, for those of you watching on the YouTube channel, I will have a diagram of the weapon taken from the Imperium Infantryman's Uplifter Primer, Democles Gulf Edition Manual. For those of you listening, though, let me explain.
Oi! We got them targets up for you, boss.
No, thank you, Snotrock. Now, what I'm holding is...
Boss?
Yes?
Why are you talking about that little gun? It ain't no good dagger. You should be talking about a shooter. You know, what the boys use.
Well, we're not talking about shooters, because humies don't use shooters, which actually reminds me, I have a very special target for you to hold on to, Snickrot. Now, stand out there about 75 yards and wave it above your head.
Okie dokie.
Yes, well, while we're waiting for Snotrock to get out there, what we will be demonstrating is the MG short pattern Lasrifle. It weighs a hefty yet not too heavy 5 pounds and is just under 3 feet long. Now, as I mentioned before, it loads a rechargeable pack, a 19 megathule range to be precise. Now, where is Blagrot? I told him to be here for the demonstration. Oh, there.
And me brought me shooter like you asked, boss.
Well done, my green-skinned friend. Now, you see that target that your comrade set out there at the very back? Yes? Okay, good. Let's see if you can hit that. I dare say, good shooting, Blagrot. You hit the target twice.
Well, you know, we be practicing.
Yes. Well, this Lasrifle has the ability to shoot a single shot for more accuracy. As you can see, Yuxin, I hit the center of the target 3 times with relative ease with only 3 shots, as opposed to the shooter that took a whole clip to hit the target twice.
Wait, that's because it's too far away. The boys like us using target closer. Yes, we hit stuff.
Okay, very well, Blackrot. Go ahead and try to hit the 3 closest targets to us. Range for those listening at 40 yards.
Yeah, we hit them all.
Yes, you did. But the Lasrifle can also be switched from single shot to full auto. As you can see, Yuxin, even with full auto on, it is far more accurate than an orc shooter. Not only did I hit all 3 targets, but I hit the ones at 75 yards away.
Wait a minute, that ain't fair. Here's a cheating. These targets ain't moving. Everybody knows orcs be better at moving stuff.
Ah, pardon me, guys, but I think I have a solution for this.
What?
Snotrock, run back and forth for us, okay? We're going to test something. Make sure you wave that target above your head. Yes, that's the good fellow.
A smashing idea, Yuxin. I think I will go first this time. Now, normally the standard MG short pattern Lasrifle has adjustable back and forth iron sights. Yet, as you can plainly see, Yuxin, I've modified this one with an optic scope and a laser sight that attaches on the underside of the stock. With these upgrades, let me demonstrate the accuracy of this fine weapon.
Oi, you also got me.
Oh, sorry. As you can see, even with Snotrock's attempts to evade my shots, I was still able to hit the target all 3 times.
True, but like Snotrock mentioned, your third shot almost missed and hit him in the top of the head. Perhaps our green-skinned fellow could do better?
Excellent thought. Very well, Blackrot. The range is yours. See if you can hit the target more than I could.
Wait, what?
Well, you missed the target, Blackrot. But you were close.
Indeed, you got Snotrock in the leg, upper chest, and I believe you blew off his right arm.
Yeah, me was trying to see it.
Good shooting, Blackrot. Probably the best I have seen from any orc.
Oh, well, thank you.
Yes, well, why don't you pick up your comrade and take him to medical while we finish our Vox?
Okie dokie. Quit your whining, you kid.
You shot me.
So,
My arm's off.
well, we'll get you a better one.
Really?
Sure. And we'll see if they got them good eatings.
Well, now that the demonstration is over, let's move on to the tanks of the Imperium.
Yes, and what would be better than talking about the greatest tank of the Imperium, the Leman Russ? The Leman Russ is the primary main battle tank of the Astra Militarum, making it also the most widely deployed tank in the Imperium. This medium tank is named after the Primarch of the Space Wolves, Leman Russ. Far from a sophisticated vehicle, the Leman Russ was designed and built with reliability and versatility in mind. It can survive the worst the galaxy can throw at it, and can run on almost any combustible liquid fuel. The Leman Russ main battle tank is an ironclad declaration of might made manifest. They are the mainstay of the Astra Militarum's armored forces, lumbering slabs of armor and intolerance whose inexorable advance has ground 1 billion foes of the Imperium to bloody ruin. Now, what the Leman Russ lacks in speed, it more than makes up for in brute force and survivability. Enemy fire patters from its inches-thick armor like dust on the wind. Between its tracks, hull, and turret, the Russ carries enough firepower to pound almost any foe into submission. The tank's rugged simplicity and ease of manufacture ensures that the Imperium can field whole companies of Leman Russ with ease, burying the outnumbered foe beneath waves of irresistible armored fury. Dedicated Leman Russ tank companies play a key role in Imperial strategy. And the greatest Imperial tank offensives will see armored formations many miles in breadth sweep all before them in a rumbling tide. However, it is common to see armored companies broken into squads to support infantry and artillery elements in the field. The Leman Russ is crewed by a minimum of 4 crewmen, including a commander, gunner, loader, and driver. Side sponsons, weapons, may be added, each of which requires an additional crew member to operate. The Leman Russ is simple to operate, but very loud and uncomfortable for its crew. Due to the noise, intra-vehicle communication is only viable by an enclosed intercom system, with the commander having access to an external voxcaster.
Oh, so, pardon me, Yuxin, but they're like the Terran 42 World War II Sherman tank, right?
Well, for those who are listening, what is the Sherman tank?
Okay, so the Sherman tank was designed by the Americans during World War II. It was a very mass-produced tank with a tractor engine in it. So while it didn't perform nearly as well as, for instance, the German Tiger. In fact, normally, anyways, if you wanted to take out a Tiger with Shermans, you normally needed like 3 or 4 of them, if you were lucky. But the simple fact, anyways, that they could, if one of them got wrecked or it got broken, you could literally use those parts to fix, like 50 tanks. It was a very cheap design, and it was designed to be mass produced. So very much like this Leman Russ.
Yeah.
Cool. Now, there's another. By the way, I hate to mention this, but there is another tank, anyways, that is very similar to this that was also used in World War II, and that was the T-34, which was used by the Soviet Union. I think that it's more like the Sherman tank, just simply because it was. The Leman Russ is significantly bulkier, and quite frankly, I like the Sherman better. But that's just me.
Anyways, the Leman Russ battle tank was first developed at some point during the Dark Age of technology, like almost everything else. But by the end of the Age of Strife, no traces of it remained, just like pretty much everything else. It was only during the Great Crusade that its STC template was rediscovered by the 6th Legion of the Legions Astartes, the Space Wolves, on the Xenos-dominated hive world of Nova Borealia. As they had been led by their Primarch, the Great Leman Russ, the Mechanicum of Mars chose to honor the Space Wolves by naming the newly discovered battle tank after their gene-sire. The Leman Russ battle tank proved to be a reliable and proven armored vehicle, and many sub-patterns mounted a wide array of weapons in service to the Imperial Army and then the Astra Militarum. In the 41st millennium, the Leman Russ tank is produced by the millions in Forge Worlds and Hive World manufactorums across the galaxy. The tank is also used by many other Imperial forces, such as Planetary Defense Force, and the Deptus Arbites. Although the Leman Russ seems to be a crude, slow, and poorly designed tank, it is an excellent benchmark for the abilities and advanced nature of Imperial technology. Despite being famed for its simplicity and reliability, the Leman Russ is an extremely complex and advanced main battle tank.
Much like the Sherman.
Indeed. The tank's frontal armor is a whopping 6 inches thick, meaning it can withstand all but the most dedicated anti-tank weaponry. Yet its side armor is much thinner. Though its top speed is a mere 18 miles an hour, this is mostly because of extremely heavy governing of the tank's engine, as a properly tuned Leman Russ can reach speeds in excess of 43 miles an hour. The Leman Russ is also known for its ability to turn on a dime, and its ability to reverse direction in only seconds remains a signature move for the vehicle. The Russ is equipped with a variety of high-tech scanners and aspect systems, plus inertial dampening technology designed to provide better stability for the firing of the tank's main weapon. The basic and most common armament of the Leman Russ tank is a turret-mounted battle cannon and a hull-mounted heavy bolter. Alternatively, a lascan can be mounted on the tank's hull instead of the heavy bolter. The Leman Russ can be equipped with 2 track mounts Are these supposed to be the sponsons?
Why, yes.
Okay, for those who don't know, a sponson is a weapon that's generally done protruding out of the side in between the tracks of a tank.
Correct. So we normally just refer to them as track mounts.
So, Leman Russ can be equipped with 2 track mounts, one on each side. The most common configuration for the track mount is 2 heavy bolters or 2 heavy flamers. Leman Russ tanks that are part of a well-equipped armored regiment sometimes have 2 multi-meltas or 2 plasma cannons as their track weapons. There are several different Leman Russ patterns used by the Imperium, as well as variants.
Hang on a second, brother. But what's the difference between a pattern and a variant?
A
I always get
pattern
confused about this.
is based off of just the makings of, generally, of the Forge world, how the Forge world makes it.
Okay.
Whereas variants are, for example, what they're equipped with for their particular role, be it, like, for example, being against a tank, tank column, they probably want something with good penetration.
Right.
So it'd be a different variant.
Would a different variant be from a Leman Russ as opposed to having a battle cannon, a las cannon mounted on the tank's hull? That would be a variant.
Right.
Okay, so what's a pattern then?
But
what's a good example of a pattern?
A good example of a pattern would be the Mars Alpha pattern, which is, in comparison to most Leman Russ tanks, it's a larger chassis, which gives more room inside of the actual tank, which actually makes it great for a regimental command vehicle.
Oh, okay. So one is more of like changing the weaponry on it, and the other is actually like the vehicle itself.
Yes.
Okay. So a variant would be changing the weaponry. A pattern would be changing the actual vehicle.
Would be the actual vehicle itself, not changing.
Okay, I got it. What other patterns do we got other than the Mars Alpha?
The other notable one would be the old-timer pattern known as the Solar, which is primarily utilized by the elite solar auxiliary cohorts of the Imperialis Auxilia. So, in other words, way back when, before
I was back in the 30th and 31st millennium, if I recall right.
Yeah.
And it's still used today?
Well, if you can find them, yeah.
Oh, okay.
These Leman Russ tanks were retrofitted with supplementary survival and exploration systems. Sometimes they were fitted with extended fuel reserves, and their engines were enhanced with forced induction chargers for increased operational range. Now, like I explained before, there are many different types of variants of Leman Russ tanks as well. But my personal favorite is the Annihilator.
Why?
Well, even though it is an uncommon Leman Russ variant, the Annihilator clearly has the best name of all the Leman Russ variants. It has also replaced the standard tank's battle cannon with a pair of twin-linked las cannons. This is similar to the identically designated Predator Annihilator tank of the Space Marines, from which this variant of Leman Russ takes its name. This change requires the addition of extra power cells inside the tank, but these use the space saved by the fact that the battle cannon ammunition no longer needs to be stored. The Annihilator's twin las cannons turn this variant into a true tank hunter, and it is in this role that the tank excels. Of course, such sophisticated tactical planning is not regarded as important by the Death Corps of Krieg regiments, who have been the most common users of this variant of Leman Russ. As such, where other regiments would regard this tank hunter as a defensive weapon, the Death Corps use them as offensive weapons to be thrown into the open assault across no man's land during a planetary siege. An even rarer Leman Russ variant is the Conqueror, only produced in any significant quantities on the Forge world of Griffin Foal, where the standard template construct plans for the design were originally rediscovered. Armed with the Conqueror cannon, the Conqueror sacrifices outright destructive power in exchange for improved mobility and accuracy, whilst firing on the move. The Leman Russ Conqueror comes standard with coaxial mounted storm bolters and searchlights, removing the need to expose a crew member to fend off oncoming enemy infantry. The back of the turret houses an armored ammunition access hatch, making rearming the tank quick and easy. This hatch is also used to dispose of spent Conqueror cannon shells. Now, one of the most common Leman Russ variants, the Demolisher, is equipped with the Demolisher cannon and is designed as a short-range bombardment and line breaker tank. The extreme power of this weapon is only hampered by its short effective range.
So small, yet deadly.
Indeed.
That's what they say about you, Yushin.
Demolishers are valued as close heavy fire support vehicles by the Imperial Guard's infantry units, and is the most common variant of the Leman Russ that is equipped with plasma cannons and multi-meltas on its track mounts in order to make them more effective against heavily armored units. Now, if your name was Cryptman, you would probably want to drive an Executioner. This strange variant is now produced only on the Forge world of Reza. The Leman Russ Executioner is armed with the Plasma Destroyer, a slightly more powerful version of the plasma cannon.
Pardon me, Yushin, but we have mentioned plasma weapons before, but I don't think we have explained how they work. You mind clarifying this for the people listening?
Certainly, plasma weapons make use of hydrogen fuel suspended in a liquid state in either fuel flasks or backpack containers. As the fuel is fed into the miniature fusion core inside the weapon, the hydrogen energizes into the plasma state of matter, which is held in the core by powerful magnetic containment fields. When fired, the fields dilate open and plasma is ejected via a linear magnetic accelerator as a bolt of superheated matter akin to a solar flare in appearance and temperature.
I see. Well, Yushin, I have one question. How does anybody survive using one of these things? They just...
I don't know. Maybe we tack it up to luck or the Emperor's Grace.
But it just...
A poorly understood and temperamental weapon, the Plasma Destroyer is often criticized for its high power requirements, limiting the tank's effectiveness in extended engagements. The turret features emergency vents, heat shielding, and coolant to both protect the crew and the weapon itself from damage should a plasma containment field failure occur. However, due to bad design, the coolant feed lines run outside of the vehicle and are prone to damage, rendering the emergency system less than reliable. Crews dislike being made to work in the Executioner and are prone to bailing out at the first sign of trouble. Crews who willingly command these tanks are often seen as foolhardy, extremely brave, or insane. However, those crews who do stick to their tanks are among the best tank killers in the Imperium, able to take out even the most heavily armored tanks and buildings due to the powerful main gun. When the tank takes too much damage, the plasma containment field for the main gun can short out, releasing an expanding shockwave of energy that can incinerate any infantry close to the vehicle. Now, if you don't really care about your troops, we got the Leman Russ variant for you. A simple, destructive vehicle, the Leman Russ Eradicator was instrumental in the urban conflict on Kaizen. Its main weapon, the Eradicator Nova Cannon, gained a fearsome reputation as a powerful anti-infantry weapon. The weapon's heavy, high-caliber ballistic shells are capable of destroying both enemy barricades and any infantry sheltering behind them with a highly volatile subatomic charge. This makes the Eradicator extremely effective in cities, jungles, or other dense terrain. With a blast radius close to that of a Demolisher cannon, but possessed of a longer range, the Eradicator Nova Cannon can effectively clear buildings of enemy infantry before they can even get a shot off. Unfortunately, the shells fired by the Nova Cannon have particularly unstable reactive cores, which can result in premature explosions during the loading process. Indeed, most Imperial Guard commanders expect a small percentage of their own forces to be destroyed in this manner, though the rate of attrition is within acceptable limits given the amount of damage these tanks can do to the enemy. Those Rakators built on the forge world of Agrippina are particularly prized for the accuracy and reliability of their Nova cannons. The Rakator is most effective supporting infantry forces fighting in areas such as cities and jungles, and is easily replicated on dozens of forge worlds. For urban combat, however, the Rakator does not feature the additional rear armor found on similar vehicles, leaving it vulnerable to attack from behind. Now, when it comes to mowing mobs of orc boys or termagants, no other Leman Russ variant does it better than the Punisher, which I think is also one of my favorites. Armed with the Punisher Gatling cannon, a large multi-barreled ballistic weapon, it is known as one of the fastest firing slug throwers in the Imperium's arsenal. The Punisher can shred even the heaviest of infantry units with punitive ease. However, the Punisher can be outmatched by enemy tanks in a head-to-head fight, and commonly only works with other Leman Russ tank variants to make up for the loss of anti-tank firepower. The crews of Punishers have reputations for being very gung-ho, extremely trigger-happy. Now, the Cyrano de Bergerac of the Leman Russ variants is the rare and elusive Vanquisher.
Uh-huh.
Well, the Vanquisher is armed with a long-barreled Vanquisher cannon that is capable of firing powerful anti-tank shells.
Oh, okay. Now I get it. Cyrano, good one.
In addition, a Stormbolter is mounted coaxially to the main cannon. However, Vanquishers are becoming increasingly rare in the Imperial service due to the actions of the Orc warlord Argard the Defiler, who scoured the Forge World Tigris in the 35th millennium, destroying the only existing template for constructing the Vanquisher cannon in the process. So, brother, what do you think of this awesome tank and its mass amount of variants?
Oh, first off, I do like all the variants. The way that they have just they literally have the same thing, but they just put whatever weapons they want on it for whatever situation they want. I mean, to me anyways, that's actually kind of brilliant, as opposed to coming up with a new tank every single time they need something. I mean, that makes a whole lot of sense. Now, okay, so real quick anyways, I do have a question. So the Vanquisher cannon, they don't make that anymore?
Nope, apparently not.
Okay, but they still have some Vanquisher cannons, yes?
Yes.
So why can't they just take one apart, figure out how it works, and then continue to make it?
Blasphemy! You dare take apart something the Adeptus Mechanicus made?
This is a Mechanicum thing then. Okay. I gotcha. We could do the logical thing, but no, we can't do that.
Because it isn't logical. What we say is logical. That's what you say.
Right. Okay. Well, out of all of them, I kind of agree with you anyways. The Punisher sounds pretty awesome. Although I will say anyways, for the Punisher, I would probably load that gun onto something anyways. It's a little faster, if that makes sense. I mean, as long as it's rumbling around, I mean, yeah, I mean, it's great if you're going up against termagants or orc boys or something like that. But if you want to, I mean, to me anyways, I would want to put that gun on something that's a little bit faster so that it can get around the battlefield a little bit better.
Well, if you've seen the gun, it looks like it's about the size of a battle cannon. So it's a little hard to put it on something that's faster.
Well, why not put it on a Chimera chassis?
Which I'll be talking about here in a minute.
But why wouldn't you put it on one of those that's faster?
I don't know how much faster Chimera is if you were to put that on it.
Oh, so you're saying anyways the weight in and of itself, you think anyways, garners how fast that thing can move?
Yeah, I think you'd attribute to it. So, yeah, Chimera might be a little bit faster, but
maybe not if you put a giant heavy gun on it.
To offset the lack of armor, probably not.
Okay, fair enough. And the other thing that I find interesting about the Leman Russ, and it's actually with a lot of the Imperium tanks, I find actually a lot of very interesting similarities between them and the tanks from Terran 42. Mainly, anyways, the tanks from World War II. Although one of the things that you did mention about the Leman Russ, how it's got this ability where you could be chugging along and the barrel doesn't move because it's still locked into wherever it's going. That reminds me more of the present day Tier 42 tank. Yeah, the M1 Abrams. But the other thing that I find interesting is, and here's my question for you anyways, is that it seems like the Imperial Guard uses a lot of tanks, right? A lot of Leman Russes in particular.
Well, they kind of have to. I mean, let's face it.
Yes and no. Here's the thing that I'm wondering anyways. Doesn't that seem a little bit outdated? Wouldn't you rather be using, I don't know, aircraft?
Well, you have to remember, this is the Astra Militarum. They don't have aircraft.
Well, yeah.
That's
well,
the
why can't they put
Navy.
But why can't they put those ties into the Air Force or the aircraft anyways of the Navy instead of putting it into these tanks?
Because once again, we come to the fact that this is the Imperial Guard. This is where we had the masses. We don't have the masses in space.
Well, okay, all I'm saying is that it might be more beneficial if they kind of actually switch this around a little bit. That's all. I mean, they won't, though. And it gets back to, anyways, the concept of how slowly the Imperium moves forwards on anything.
If it moves forwards on
if it moves forward at all.
So
you mentioned, anyways, that your two favorite tanks are the Punisher and the Annihilator. Why are they your favorites?
Well, the Punisher, well, for one reason why I like them is because their names are awesome.
Right. Yeah.
That along with
very good name.
Eradicator.
But that one not so much because of, the whole volatile explosion.
Right.
If you're trying to load it.
Well, I personally like the Vanquisher just on the concept that it's kind of the ultimate tank killer. And it hits a lot harder above its weight class, I guess. I mean, a Vanquisher can take out like a Baneblade, right? I mean, they're designed to take out big, heavy things. I mean, they could probably take out even a very, very small Titan. Not one of the big ones, mind you, but what are they called? Hellhounds, or what do they call the smallest Titans?
Warhounds.
Warhounds, yeah, sorry, not Hellhound. Warhounds. Yeah, I could see a Vanquisher taking one of these out too.
Yeah.
But it seems like the ones that you like, anyways, they're much more anti-infantry. It's just like, we have 10,000 men. We have a tank. Kind of concept.
And you know what? We can tread yours faster than your tank can kill our men.
Exactly. So why do you kind of lean that way? I can see why you would, but
I like the design of the weapon better. The Annihilator is actually more of a tank hunter.
Right. Well, it's got the two las cannons on top of it, right? They're twin mounted. Yeah.
And I also like the Vanquisher. The Vanquisher looks like, though, if you put too much weight on the barrel, it just tip over. Freaking long.
That was a very
longer than the tank itself.
That was a very excellent concept, anyways. The Cyrano de Bergerac of tanks. Its nose is so long that it's just a preposterous proboscis, so to speak. But well, that's kind of why I like it too, though, is because it is so much different than the rest of them. But yeah, I mean, the Leman Russ has been kind of the standard for the Imperial Army for millennia, right? Well, and you've got other tanks. I mean, you're going to talk about, like, for instance, the Baneblade here in a bit, and we've got some of the faster stuff. But the one tank that we aren't talking about, which is
past 10,000 years,
right? And the one tank that we aren't going to talk about is the Rogal Dawn, but which apparently has been around forever, but no one knew that it was there. Yeah. Anyways, to me, it just seems like it is truly the standard killer of the Imperial Guard. It's very much like the las gun or las rifle that I was talking about. This is the easily manufactured. We've got a ton of them. We're going to use them, and they blast everything out of existence. So would it be a fair comparison to say that the Leman Russ is the Lasrifle of the Imperial modern or the mobile infantry?
Loosely, yes.
Okay. Now, we do have to move on. And I have to say, anyways, the Imperial Guard does not just roll into battle on the mighty Leman Russ. Sometimes they need to move faster, yet some have comforting armor to do so. Yet the first fast attack we need to talk about has very little armor, if any. And those that ride in a battle on these animals are known as the Rough Riders.
Wait, what? I think that last demonstration must have rung your bell. The Rough Riders are from Terran 42, led by Theodore Roosevelt during the Cuban War of Independence.
You are indeed correct. On Terran 42, the Rough Riders was a nickname given to the 1st United States Volunteer Cavalry, one of 3 regiments raised in 1898 for the Spanish-American War, and the only one to see combat. But I am actually talking about the Astra Militarum, and they have units known as Rough Riders themselves.
Really?
Yes, and I have a quote by Draven Gratz from the 14th Thuringia Regiment, and he said, I've seen war in all forms. I've seen feral world savages braining each other with stones, and I've monitored the death of whole planets at the hands of virus bombs. I've seen space marines dropped to certain death and win. I've seen Titans crash whole platoons underfoot. But there is no more stirring sight in war than the charge of a massed cavalry. Now, since the days of ancient Terra, the cavalry charge has been one of the most impressive displays of battlefield power available to humankind. Be the oddly armed mercenaries on barely trained horses, or ranks of gleaming knights atop sturdy thoroughbreds. The ancient warriors of old could smash through infantry like a melta charge through hull plating, and the sheer psychological effect of such a charge could end battles as quickly as the damage it inflicted. Yet even in the endless wars of the 41st millennium, where tanks and god machines stride the battlefield and void ships with thousands of crew hang in orbit unleashing megatons of explosive death, the cavalryman and his trusted steed still have a vital role to play. The Astra Militarum often makes use of specialized cavalry units known as Rough Riders. Even with its legions of machinery and armored fighting vehicles, the Imperial Guard has a place for these mounted warriors. The majority of Rough Rider units are raised from worlds where it is still common for warriors to fight from horseback.
The Khan would be proud.
Yes. Well, on these planets, fierce nomadic clans and warrior horse lodges have perfected the art of mounted cavalry techniques through years of bloodshed. Rough Riders retain many ferocious customs of their technologically primitive homeworlds, such as ritual scarring and tribal tattoos. Their steeds are bred for toughness and aggressiveness, and are often just as dangerous and ill-tempered as the warriors who ride them. In addition to selective breeding in environments often very different from that of ancient Terra and the use of genetic engineering, many mounts used by Rough Rider units are given biochemical treatments to enhance their combat potential, such as the Krieg mounts utilized by the Death Riders of the Death Corps of the Krieg regiments. While the majority of Rough Riders are raised from feral, undeveloped worlds, this is not exclusively the case. On some more advanced planets, the honor of riding a living steed to war is reserved for the elite classes, formalized horse warrior aristocracies that have accumulated generations of cavalry experience. The Rough Rider squad of skilled mounted cavalry can be an effective assault and skirmishing force, able to move rapidly over broken ground, climb steep slopes, and gallop along narrow ravines. Now, Rough Riders are used to operating out on their own beyond the normal lines of communication, often deep inside enemy territory. They are able to forage and subsist off the land and can function for extended durations with only the minimal of basic supplies. They possess a tactical advantage by employing living mounts rather than vehicles, which require neither fuel nor maintenance, and unlike their mechanical counterparts, cannot be as easily traced with auspex or electronic scanners. As such, the Rough Riders are often utilized to harass enemy troop movements by means of hit-and-run attacks.
So, no longer are they a hammer to smash into the enemy like the knights of old on Terran 42, but more like the dragoons, or dare I say, the winged hussars?
You got it, brother. But we must move on to the mechanical scouts.
Can I at least do it once?
Sure.
And the winged hussars arrived, coming down the mountainside.
Yes, well, that was interesting. Well, when one can't find a Rough Rider battalion to scout, the Imperial Guards use the Sentinel Scouts. Now, the Sentinel is a one-man, all-terrain, lightweight bipedal combat walker that is used by various regiments of the Astra Militarum. Sentinels achieve a perfect balance of robustness and mobility, able to negotiate terrain that would immobilize heavier main battle tanks and other armored vehicles while still being able to face down fire that would shred ranks of infantry.
So it's like an ATST, aka Chicken Walker from Terran 42's Star Wars?
Yes, actually, but smaller, and with a wider selection of firepower, ranging from autocannons, las cannons, missile launchers, meltas, heavy flamers, plasma cannons, and heavy bolters. But what is really used for fast attack has tracks. And these vehicles of war run on the same chassis, yet they can be separated into 4 groups: the Bane Wolf, Chimera APC, Devil Dog, and the Hellhound. Now, all these armored vehicles run on the Chimera APC chassis, and for good reason. Nimble for a track vehicle, the Chimera is a standard armored personnel carrier, also known as a APC, of the Astra Militarum. The basic Chimera is equipped with a multi-laser for a turret, but can also be outfitted with a variety of other heavy weapons, such as the twin-linked heavy bolters, or an autocannon, or flamer. The Chimera also mounts a hull-mounted heavy bolter, or heavy flamer, and 6 hull-mounted las guns on the vehicle's flanks, which can be fired from the passenger compartments, allowing the infantry inside to fire at the enemy. It can carry up to 12 guardsmen, 6 heavy weapons teams, or 4 ogrins. The Chimera also has amphibious capabilities, allowing it to take part in naval amphibious assaults or overcome watery obstacles like swamps and rivers. Over the millennia, the Chimera has been pressed into service in a variety of different forms, proving its reliability of worth time and time again. It is a highly versatile vehicle capable of operating in the most hostile environments. Its tracks are capable of traversing almost any surface, and its amphibious design allows it to move through dense swamps, deep marshes, and even rivers. Many an enemy army has been destroyed because its general thought its flanks protected by such obstructions, only to find ranks of Imperial Guardsmen, supported by the fearsome anti-personnel weaponry of the Chimera transports, disgorging into the very heart of the forces. Squads of Astra Militarum troopers mounted on chimeras are sometimes referred to as armored fist squads. Now, these squads lend speed and tactical flexibility to the often slow and rigid ranks of the Imperial Guard. An Astra Militarum infantry regiment does not typically include any mechanized elements, as it is difficult for most Imperial planetary governors to obtain and then maintain the vehicles from the Adeptus Mechanicus needed for such units. Because of this reality, it is quite common for Astra Militarum commanders to attach armored fist squads from other fully mechanized regiments to provide fast-moving armored transports to non-mechanized infantry units. Now, armored fist squads have a reputation for
Getting the job done.
and are in high demand by Astra Militarum infantry commanders. The armored protection of the Chimera is vital for a successful assault, and so they are typically deployed against the most heavily defended of enemy positions. It is therefore no surprise that armored fist squads suffer even higher casualty rates than the standard infantry formations. Now, some Mechanicum priest, at some point or another, thought it might be a good idea to switch the weapons on the turret for something more sporty, and they came up with the Hellhound. Now, this tech priest liked fire in an unhealthy amount, one would say.
Pyromaniac?
Yes. The Hellhound is a flamethrower tank. Its main weapon is an Inferno cannon, also known as
The Dragonfire Thrower.
which is a large flamer that projects streams of burning promethium at range, making the Hellhound well suited to close-range fire support missions. such as countering enemy melee units that attempt to assault Imperial armor and drive dug-in enemies out of cover. Hellhound tanks usually make up their own company in a regiment, but are rarely fielded as one. Instead, the Hellhound and its variants are attached to an infantry and armored regiment as they are needed. The crew of the Hellhound are often considered brave, as the tank is prone to exploding spectacularly if an enemy round detonates the fuel tank. But many Hellhound crews are made of pyromaniacs, who actually prefer the Hellhound's fire-based weapons and spend much of their free time playing with the output of the Hellhound's promethium dispersal valves to increase the vehicle's fire output. It is discouraged by Imperial commanders, as it makes these vehicles even more prone to explosion. Unfortunately, the Hellhound sacrifices the Chimera's transport capacity for larger engines and bulky canisters of volatile promethium fuel, because the Hellhound sports a monstrous turret-mounted flamethrower that discharges a self-igniting chemical. The Hellhound's only real disadvantage, other than, randomly exploding, is the comparative short range of its primary armament, a limitation that forces it to close with the foe during combat. When coupled with the understanding that the fully fueled Hellhound is a massive firebomb waiting to happen, it is unsurprising that most Hellhound crews are drawn from punishment details and somewhat unhinged followers.
Sounds a bit unhinged.
Indeed. But you know what? Another tech priest got a hold of the Hellhound schematics and said, "This is ridiculous. I can make it far more dangerous."
Brilliant.
Yes. Now, he said, let's not use all that crazy fire that one tech priest used. Let's strap a melta cannon on the turret.
Oh no.
Yes. The Devil Dog replaces the Hellhound's Inferno cannon with a snub-nosed melta cannon that is used by the Imperial Guard for anti-armor combat and for engaging enemy heavy infantry, such as those wearing power armor. As the Devil Dog is a variant of the Hellhound, its troop compartment has been replaced with an armor storage area for a pyrum petrol fuel mix, acquiring its name from the high-pitched howl its melta cannon makes upon fire. The Devil Dog is capable of punching far above its weight in armored combat.
True, but you gotta get close.
Indeed. Yet, many Devil Dog crews style themselves as big game hunters or monster slayers, excelling in the eradication of enemy armor and exceptionally heavy infantry assets. A foe forced to fight protracted campaigns in dense terrain against the Astra Militarum soon learns to dread the hunched silhouette of the Devil Dog. Those who don't find their vehicles reduced to molten slag by this aggressive and fast-moving tank hunter.
Well, I think we're done with these kooky tech priests. Perhaps we move on to the flyers of the guard?
Well, I normally would say sure, yet I have one more variant that's far more destructive than the rest. You see, we had one last tech priest who looked at the destruction of the Devil Dog and the firepower
We got jokes.
of the Hellhound. And after reading about the Necron's gauze weapons, he came up with his own variant known as the Bane Wolf. Now, the Bane Wolf is a variant of the Hellhound flamethrower tank that replaces the Hellhound's Inferno cannon with a special chemical weapon known as a Chem Cannon that makes it more effective in an anti-infantry role. The Chem Cannon is very potent against all types of infantry, even heavily armored elite soldiers and those wearing power armor.
I hate to ask, but what does the Chem Cannon do?
Well, the Chem Cannon is a virulent chemical weapon that fires a gas so toxic that it dissolves all organic material it comes into contact with, stripping flesh from bone before rendering even that down into the bubbling pool of rank, festering ooze.
Yet again, I hate to ask, but what happens if it hits the wind?
Yes, well, using such a lethal weapon is not without its risks, like you mentioned. Should the environment condition shift on the battlefield, the highly acidic clouds of gas can quickly drift over the Astra Militarum's own troops, killing and maiming infantry and even affecting tank crews if their vehicle is not completely sealed against such toxic airborne contaminants.
What a terribly designed weapon.
Yes, well, on a completely different note, When the Bane Wolf rumbles past, it is up to a regiment's commissars to ensure that those under their charge do not immediately flee in fear of the horrors their own machines of war can unleash. Now, I know you want to get into the flyers of the Astra Militarum, but what do you think of these rather speedy vehicles, brother?
Well, one of the things is the Rough Riders, even though that they're mainly known for being animal mounts, they also, on some planets, have to use things like bikes instead because
it is a rarity, but yes,
aren't really necessarily able to be.
You are correct, sir. Normally Rough Riders ride some sort of animal mount, and it's not just horses, by the way. There's all sorts of and all sorts of different. In fact, one anyways is like a winged cat, which is kind of cool. But yes, occasionally on some feral planets where they don't even really have animals that they can ride on, bikes are used. And when I say bikes, not like the pedaling kind, but the motorized.
Yeah.
The motorcycle.
Yes, pedaling down the road.
Yes.
With glass guns attached.
But I think probably the best example of this you mentioned when we were going through this script, and that was when Cyphus Cain was on that. I think it was it was a frozen world, right?
Right.
And he ends up. They were there to fight a orc wog or a bunch of orcs, and they ended up waking up a bunch of Tyranids. Yeah. And during that time, anyways, the Rough Riders end up showing up and saving Cyphus Cain, if I recall right?
Yeah. Well, they helped.
You care to explain?
Okay. In a way, loosely, yes, they saved his bacon. But that's because a couple of them died and they ended up taking the bikes.
Oh no. Well, you got anything else anyways about these fast movers?
No, not offhand.
Okay. Well, why don't you move on anyways to the flyers of the Astra Militarum? Wait a minute. I know that technically the Astra Militarum has some flyers, but I thought one of the safeguards Rabute Gilman put in place was that the Imperial Guard has no flying vehicles.
True.
So, what gives? I mean, explain yourself.
Well, despite serving the technical needs of the Imperial Guard, a Valkyrie and its crew are usually composed of pilots and armsmen drawn from the Navis Imperialis, Aeronautica Imperialis, and are provided to the Astra Militarum on a as-needed basis. So basically, the Navy loans out Valkyries and their crews to the Imperial Guard as transports and air support.
Well, I see. But, okay, so real quick, before we move on anyways, what is a Valkyrie? And how are they used by the Astra Militarum?
Well, basically, they are the Astra Militarum's version of a Thunderhawk.
Okay, so they're like fast-moving. They do have some weaponry attached to them, but they're really fast-moving transports then.
Right, yeah.
Okay.
And then there's some variants of it that are meant for just attack craft, like the Vendetta. And then they have one that's meant for carrying light vehicles instead of people. Okay, so like if we were going to compare this to like weaponry from Terran 42, they're like helicopters, right? Yeah, they somewhat remind me of the Heinz. Is that what the Russian helicopter? That's the War Pig, yeah, the Russian War Pig. Yeah. And I mean that, by the way, its term is actually the War Pig. I'm not trying to say it's a terrible thing because it's a pig because it's Russian. No, it's known as the War Pig, and it is literally a flying tank. That's what it does. And then there's some versions of it that actually have basically a crane-like vehicle lift section to them. Oh, yeah, there are helicopters like that too. So when are these used? I guess in combat. How are they used? Because I understand, anyways. Like for instance, the Thunderhawk, anyways, is designed anyways to get shock troops. The Astra Militarum, not the Astra Militarum, the Adeptus Astartes.
in quick and fast anyways, and they're shock troops. So the concept is that they run in and they just kind of massacre everything. How does it work with the Valkyries and the Astra Militarum?
They operate kind of like a helicopter in comparison.
Okay, so how would a helicopter work in Turn 42's military, for those that don't know?
It'd swoop down. It would use its weapons to cover while people would get out onto the ground and then take off.
So like supplying quick infantry to places that are under heavy fire.
Yeah.
Or like special forces anyways coming out of a place and they need to escape. Helicopters are often used. So the Valkyrie kind of does the same thing.
Yeah, and sometimes they have them like flying up above just in case there needs to be a quick exit.
Right. Okay. Well, we do have to move on to the other thing the Astra Militarum is very well known for, and that is the whole plethora of artillery pieces that keep the enemy cowering in their bunkers, from the common basilisk and the heavy Medusa, which we have already discussed in our previous Voxes, most notably our Vox,
The Art of Siege Warfare,
and the less, but also good,
The Noble Imperial Fist.
Now, while the Imperial Guard has many shell-firing artillery, I find myself interested with the missiles that they use from fixed positions.
Wait a minute. Artillery is defined as large caliber guns used in warfare on land, while missiles are a weapon that is self-propelled or directed by remote control, carrying conventional or nuclear explosives.
Yes, well, technically, though, a missile is an object which is forcibly propelled at a target, either by hand or by some mechanical weapon.
Zektar.
Okay. I hear you, brother. I get what you mean. You know, the Astra Militarum has a couple of missiles that form the same concept that an artillery barrage would do. They're just missiles.
Fine. What are these weapons?
Well, they range from the Death Strike missile launcher, which is just a single missile shot from long range that is just below nuclear, to the one I want to talk about, the Manticore missile system or tank. You see, the Manticore is one of the most feared units in the Imperial Guard, a formidable weapon. The Manticore is capable of firing devastating barrages over incredible ranges, though not as commonly seen on the battlefield as a Basilisk or an Earthshaker cannon. The Manticore's versatility gives it a distinct advantage over other artillery. You see, the Manticore is armed with 4 long-range artillery rockets, capable of firing a variety of different warheads, such as the highly explosive fragmentation warheads, oxy-phosphor incendiary warheads, air gas warheads to high altitude, and even surface-to-air interceptor missiles. But the most common type remains the deadly Storm Eagle rockets, the signature payload of these ancient siege vehicles. Yet what makes the system of war peculiar is it is an ancient siege engine that dates back to the earliest days of the Imperium of Man. Once these potent missile launchers mounted a variety of devastating warheads. Yet, over time, as Forged Worlds have fallen and humanity's technological lore has been lost behind the veil of mythology, the Manticore's versatility has lessened. You see, although its potency is undeniable, the Manticore is an ancient machine and prone to exhibiting considerable technological, how should I put this? Eccentricities. Yes. To reload a Manticore requires several solar hours of careful, uninterrupted administration by a crew of tech priests and specialist servitors. This process absolutely cannot be undertaken in the field, rendering the vehicle's ammunition reserve finite. This is coupled with the fact that the sheer antiquity of the surviving Manticores has rendered the machine spirits downright temperamental. If prevailing conditions are not to the rocket launcher's liking, or its systems are treated without due delicacy, the Manticore has been known to malfunction in the most willful manner. Storm Eagle rockets deviate wildly off course, fall uselessly out of the air, or simply ignore the depression of launch runes with curmudgeonly indifference. A Manticore crew will commonly bow to their machine before and after combat, humbly entreating its permission to discharge its weapons, and then thanking it for delivering the Emperor's wrath. During battle, they maintain a near constant mantra of prayer and obedience, with the aim of mollifying their armored steed. Yet operating difficulties are still commonplace. Which begs the question, Yuxin. The machine spirit in the Imperium's arsenal. Is it a magical spirit that needs to be massaged before combat? Or is it just not properly made?
I just think that
Shoot, we didn't talk about this when we did the script. I think this is actually a fairly interesting conversation because, you know, every mechanical thing in the Imperium supposedly is it uses the machine spirit, right?
Right.
So I don't know how much of that, anyways, is really just kind of fantasy, mythological aspect, or if it really is that there's some sort of like chaos warp entity in every single machine used. It's either that or it's just not properly made.
I think part of it's hoping on a prayer that it doesn't explode.
Okay.
Another part of it's probably the fact that they're being somewhat overlooked by tech priests that load it.
So you thinking it's more of a mechanical problem than it is there is a machine spirit in every piece of mechanical weaponry.
And who they're around at the time.
See, okay, I hate to go into this, but we do have to talk about the Mechanicum here for a second. So the Mechanicum thinks anyways that the Omnissiah, the Omnissiah is this almighty machine god, and every spirit of machinery, or everything in machinery made, has got this spirit in it. And you have to thank the machine spirit before it's used. That's their logic, as opposed to a normal person's logic, which would look at it and say, okay, you made the missile wrong. You set up the firing mechanism anyways wrong. And yes, well, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, because it is not functioning properly. Not because some mumbo-jumbo spirit anyways says that it's not working, which is another reason why I have a problem with the Mechanicum, because they're just like, the machine spirits. It's like, it's not a machine spirit. You just screwed up. You dunst. What do you think? That's my two.
In my opinion.
What do you think? So you think it's kind of a combination between the two?
It is a combination of them praying that it just doesn't break down, hopeful prayer. And the other part is them knowing that the Mechanicus is looking over their shoulder pretty much the entire time, because they're the ones that are...
No. I'm saying anyways, the whole concept of the machine spirit. What do you think of that? I understand what you said anyways with the Manticore. I get that. Yes.
I think it's not the machine spirit. I think the machine spirit is a religious creation by the Adeptus Mechanicus.
It's a farce.
Well, they don't think it is, but...
No, but what I'm saying is, do you think it is?
Yes.
I would agree with you, and I wholeheartedly agree with you, except for I think anyways, because so as we have talked about the warp, there is a concept of the warp where, because people believe in it, the warp starts to shift things, right? So if you've got enough people, like for instance, believing in the Emperor of Mankind, it shifts anyways how the warp deals with humanity, right?
Okay.
So if you've got enough people like these Dunderhead Mechanicum anyways, that think that everything has a machine spirit in it, and everybody is taught this way, do you think anyways that the warp has slightly infused any of this stuff?
I don't think so, but...
You don't think so? Okay. Not with something mechanical.
No.
Okay. Well, okay, that's something anyways that I think anyways we could get into a much longer conversation, but we are running out of time, and we do need to talk about the big guys. And you know what I'm talking about. You said large tanks. Yes. Like the Baneblade.
Now, before I talk about the famous super heavy vehicle, the Baneblade, I would like to briefly talk about the Capital Imperialis.
Oh,
you see, the Capital Imperialis. Yes.
I'm slightly confused. I thought we were going to talk about the Baneblade, but what is the Capital Imperialis?
You see, the Capital Imperialis is a super heavy tracked vehicle often used by the Astra Militarum as a mobile command base for the deployment and organization of multiple regiments. The vehicle is heavily armored and is protected by multiple void shields due to its sheer size and slow speed. That, of a brisk walk, which limits the vehicle to defensive roles during combat.
Okay. Hang on. Erickson. I just looked up an image of this. But so for those of you wondering what this looks like on the podcast, imagine the sandcrawler from Star Wars. You know, the thing the Jawas rolled around in on Tatooine? Yeah. Now just flip that upside down and you have the Capital Imperialis.
Now, Zekdar.
Oh, come on. Tell me I'm wrong.
Well, that is exactly what it looks like, but with the cannon on top.
Okay, fair enough.
Anyways, the Capital Imperialis is used by the Imperial Guard in large campaigns where multiple regiments and possibly other Imperial factions such as the Adeptus Astartes and Adeptus Mechanicus will be working cooperatively. The Capital Imperialis allows the campaign's commanders to meet in a secure place that can move along with the front line, although very, very slowly. The Capital Imperialis is a massive vehicle that stands nearly 55 yards tall and 87 yards long, rivaling some Imperial Titans in size. The vehicle's outer hull is plated in solid adamantium, and it is outfitted with 6 void shield generators for extra protection. Within its massive hold, the Capital Imperialis can carry up to 2 full companies of Astra Militarum infantry, 200 troops, and accompanying battle tanks, while a host of Adeptus Mechanicus tech priests, adepts, and servitors tend the massive behemoth cannon and hundreds of secondary weapons. This allows the vehicle to act as a mobile bunker for troops, especially on inhospitable worlds, and the embarked guardsman can further support the Capital Imperialis by fighting from its protective bulk. The command chamber is situated deep within the vehicle and gives the regiment's commander the tools needed to command his troops effectively. The command chamber is a broad room 25 by 40 yards and is dominated by a massive glowing hololith display at its center. A line of communications panels manned by servitors and adjutants light one wall, while the opposite bulkhead is filled with a live feed visual display from the transport scanners and the planetary strategic network. The Capital Imperialis is armed with a wide variety of...
Houston.
What?
So the command deck is actually in the middle of this giant thing?
Yeah.
That's interesting. Well, normally when you think of something that's this large anyways, you think the bridge, you know, like at the front of it where you can actually see out of it is kind of, you know, where everything takes place. But you're saying this is like the bridge is like in the middle of it?
Yeah. That's why they have the live feed visual display for the transport scanners.
Well, no, that's kind of interesting. I can't think of any other vehicle that really runs that way other than
it makes sense though.
It does. No. I hear you. It does make sense. It's just it's normally anyways when you think of something this large, you think of, you know, it's the bridge. It's up top so that you can kind of see everything that is going on. That's fairly interesting. But sorry. Anyways, what is the Capital Imperialis armed with?
Starting with a variety of powerful weapons that allows the vehicle to hold its own against even the most impossible odds. The vehicle's main weapon is a massive macro cannon known as a behemoth cannon. The behemoth cannon is supposedly large enough that 4 Leman Russ's tanks are capable of fitting in its barrel. The concussive force of firing the weapon can knock nearby troops off their feet and cause avalanches and rock slides. A direct hit from this weapon is capable of killing thousands of enemy soldiers or vehicles, and the impact of its rounds can throw even armored vehicles hundreds of yards into the air while producing a massive mushroom cloud. Secondary hull-mount weapons, including heavy bolters for close-in defensive fire, and the outer hull can be electrically charged to repel porters.
Sounds like a terrible weapon of destruction, brother. Especially because it was designed by Jawas. But what of the Baneblade, sir?
Ah, yes. Well, the Baneblade is the primary super heavy tank of the Astra Militarum, and one of the largest and oldest armored fighting vehicles in the service of the Imperial Armed Forces. It is so large, in fact, that it requires a crew of 10 to operate it. They are often used as command vehicles by the Imperial Guard commanders. Bristling with armaments, a Baneblade is less of a tank and more of a rolling fortress, an unmistakable icon of the Imperium's armored supremacy. A single one of these super heavy war engines can serve as the mailed fist of an Astra Militarum offensive, or as the unassailable linchpin of even the most desperate of defenses. Wherever a Baneblade sees battle, it quickly becomes the center of the battle line. Guardsmen and smaller tanks shelter its colossal shadow, even as the ranks of the enemy flee from it in abject terror. The sight of a mighty Baneblade rumbling forward is a major boost for any supporting Imperial infantry's morale. And when correctly supported, the Baneblade excels at decimating anything smaller than itself with its large array of guns, while crushing the remains of its enemies under its massive tracks. For all its might, however, the Baneblade is not perfect. It is slow, lacks maneuverability, and is a very large target. Picture a battleship from Terran 42 on wheels. Baneblades are also not as effective when facing dedicated anti-armor vehicles due to the relative short range of their weapons. A single tank hunter like a Leman Russ Vanquisher can easily damage or even destroy a Baneblade long before it comes into range of the smaller tank. This is why the very adaptable chassis of the Baneblade has been used over the millennia to create more dedicated versions, of which I shall talk about in just a bit. The majority of Baneblades are produced on Mars, and the Lords of the Red Planet holds the Mars-class vehicle as the inalienable iteration of the Machine God's vision, and it galls them greatly that certain other Forge worlds produce their own patterns. Baneblade and its variants are amongst the oldest patterns of tanks still being used by the Imperium of Man in the 41st millennium. It is rumored that in the past there were entire divisions of Baneblades in service to the Emperor of Mankind, but that number is severely diminished at present, like most of the more advanced technologies available to the Imperium. There are two main patterns of Baneblade, the Lucius pattern from Forge World Lucius, and the preeminent Mars pattern, still manufactured on Mars itself. The Lucius pattern Baneblade has a more heavily fortified chassis and larger amounts of armor plate, and makes use of a more powerful engine to remain mobile with this added weight. However, the vast majority of Baneblades available in the Imperium were created in the forges of Mars. Every Baneblade made in the Imperium is transcribed with its own unique serial number and name, and all the records of each vehicle's service and accomplishments in combat are reverently recorded on the Forge world of that vehicle's construction. Now, the Baneblade possesses a powerful set of armaments. The standard Baneblade complement includes a turret-mounted Mega Battle Cannon, also known as the Baneblade Cannon, which includes a coaxial autocannon, 3 sets of twin-linked heavy bolters, 1 track-mounted set on either side, and 1 turret-mounted on the front hollow slope, 2 turret-mounted las cannons on either side, mounted directly above the side track mounts, and lastly, a fixed forward hull-mounted demolisher cannon. This totals 11 weapon barrels of various sizes and rolls, giving full coverage in all arcs. The Baneblade can be further given a pintle-mounted storm bolter or heavy stubber and a single fire hunter-killer missile launcher, bringing the total up to 13. The vehicle can also be outfitted with a searchlight and smoke launchers.
Well, you definitely need those.
Well, the smoke launchers, I have no idea why. The searchlight, maybe.
Well, okay. We'll talk about that in a minute.
The smoke launchers, I don't know why.
Yeah. I'm there with you. But yeah, go ahead.
Now, there are several variants of the Baneblade officially recognized by the Adeptus Mechanicus that are in current use with the Astra Militarum. The standard template construct chassis of the Baneblade is highly adaptable, and tech priests have capitalized on this, furnishing the Astra Militarum with the tools of war it required without having to have the Imperial Guard field their own much harder to produce and maintain Titan legions. These vehicles are mostly the result of an Imperial commander discovering an unmet tactical need that can only be accomplished by a super heavy tank like the Baneblade. These variants are created by changing out the tank's standard weapons with those not usually found on a Baneblade. Known variants of the Baneblade include the super heavy tanks such as the Hellhammer, which replaces the original Mega Battle Cannon with the Hellhammer Cannon, and the Stormhammer that replaces the Mega Battle Cannon with a set of twin-linked battle cannons and adds a second turret on the front hull with another set of twin-linked battle cannons.
So what are these other variants?
We're moving on. These are the 2 acknowledged variants. We're moving on to the next super heavy tank.
No. You said those were patterns.
No. The Hellhammer
Is a
and
variant.
the Stormhammer are variants.
Those are variants. Yes.
Yes.
I said,
I
so
already
what are
talked
the
about
other
the
variants?
patterns. The patterns were the Mars and the
No,
Lucian.
that. I said. So what are the other variants?
I already gave you the 2.
There's more than just 2, right?
Those are the 2 that are accepted.
Well, what about the Shadow Sword? I thought that was a variant.
That is not a Baneblade.
Oh.
It is the sister tank of the more common Baneblade.
Oh, okay. My bad. I'm sorry. What does the Shadow Sword do?
It is nearly identical with the exception of its armament and battlefield role as a Titan killer. Armed with a massive forward-firing gun known as Volcano Cannon, the Shadow Sword's primary focus during combat is the destruction of enemy Titans. Where many super heavy vehicles excel in protracted battles, their thick armor allowing them to outlast endless waves of enemies, the Shadow Sword is designed to bring a swift and crushing end to the opposing enemy. Equipped with a hull-mounted Volcano Cannon, among the largest weapons ever fitted to a tank, the mere appearance of a Shadow Sword on the battlefield spells doom for enemies of the Imperium. As the Shadow Sword speeds forward, if you can call it that, the roar of massive engines is drowned out by the whir of the Volcano Cannon powering up. The ruby red...
What do you mean, if you can call it that? It sounds like it's faster than the Baneblade, right?
No.
Please tell me. No?
No.
Well, okay. I'm just gonna let you. I'm gonna let you finish here. I'm just gonna take my tongue, throw it over my shoulder, and I'm just gonna wait until you're done here, anyways, and then we'll go ahead and talk.
The ruby beam of laser light that it fires pierces the thick smog of battle, blasting through infantry armor and Xenos monstrosities with ease. Even Eldari Wraithwights, Tyranid Bio-Titans, and Orc Gargants can be toppled by a single direct hit from a Shadow Sword. If no enemy Titans are present, the Shadow Sword is sometimes deployed as a siege tank, obliterating enemy fortifications at long range, or as a super heavy armor hunter. The sheer capacity for devastation of the Volcano Cannon is often enough to demoralize and put to rout those enemies of mankind who care about their survival. But most Imperial Guard commanders are loath to field their rare and precious Shadow Swords in any other role than Titan hunting. This reluctance stems from the fact that for all the devastating might of the Volcano Cannon, the Shadow Sword's drawbacks almost always overshadow the potential advantages of fielding it, except when hunting Titans. The Volcano Cannon was first designed as a Titan-grade weapon, and when fitted to a battle Titan, the power required to fire comes directly from the God Machine's plasma reactor. Now, installing a plasma reactor to super heavy tanks chassis has proven impossible for safety reasons. Hence, the Mechanicus devised a power converting system, which allows the weapon to draw the necessary power from the tank's engine by increments and build it up in a set of capacitors until the charge is high enough to fire the Volcano Cannon. The system has proven effective, but it imposes several limitations on the Shadow Sword. In a combat situation, the tank's engine must simultaneously propel the tank and charge the gargantuan volcano capacitors. This results in the Shadow Sword maintaining extremely low maximum speed, forcing the tank to lumber forward slowly, yard by yard. Even with the majority of the engine's energy output going towards charging the capacitors, the Volcano Cannon itself has a low rate of fire, with less than 1 shot per minute. and has almost no traversing in its fixed setting, requiring the tank to be bodily aimed at the target. Worse, the engine of the Shadow Sword must be stopped before firing the volcano cannon to prevent any feedback from the capacitors with potentially catastrophic results. This makes any form of dynamic targeting impossible and leaves the Shadow Sword a sitting duck, highly vulnerable to air assault and counter battery fire for long moments as it must restart its engines and start lumbering forward again. Additionally, the energy demands of the volcano cannon are so voracious that the Shadow Sword's secondary armaments is reduced to 2 twin-linked heavy bolters track mounts, inadequate to fend off any form of concerted assault. All these drawbacks mean that in the absence of sufficiently large and potent targets, the Shadow Sword will remain in reserve and out of harm's way, carefully tended by the tech priests and engineers for those moments when its extraordinary firepower is truly required. Now, there are actually quite a few variants of the Shadow Sword, such as the Storm Sword that replaces the Shadow Sword's volcano cannon with a massive artillery piece known as a Hellhammer siege cannon. This huge weapon is capable of destroying buildings in a single shot and is perfect for dense urban combat against garrisoned enemy infantry. Or the Bane Hammer that replaces volcano cannon with an artillery piece known as a tremor cannon. Its huge weapons shells are fused to explode only after the force of their impact has already buried them in the ground. These shells not only cause huge explosion when their fuses go off, but they are capable of creating a large shockwave that can knock enemies off their feet, or at least slow them down enough for the Imperial artillery pieces to bombard them into oblivion. This allows the tank to keep large groups of fast-moving enemies, such as the Tyranids, from getting too close to Imperial front lines while they are fired upon by other allied units. Now, Stormlord is a relatively new addition to the Shadow Sword variants officially recognized by Adeptus Mechanicus. The Stormlord trades in the anti-armor and anti-tank weaponry of all the other variants in favor of an anti-infantry role. The tank replaces volcano cannon with the Vulcan Mega Bolter, a weapon usually found only on Titans. The massive capacitors and generators required for the use of the volcano cannon are completely removed, and since the weapon's ammunition does not take up any space, there is a large area available within the tank's heavy armored hull for infantry transport. The tank can carry up to 40 infantrymen and is highly prized for both its transport capacity and its extreme firepower. Well, what do you think of the super tanks of the Imperium of Mankind?
Well, find them lacking. They're terrible. It's just terrible. So the concept of a tank. Yes, we have to go back to this because apparently these Mechanicum people didn't understand this. But the concept of a tank is something that moves just fast enough that it works as a heavy piece of equipment that bullets bounce off of it from normal infantry units. But it's fast enough anyways that it can move through the battlefield so that other things that are larger can't hit it and can kill everything around it. That's the concept of a tank. These just don't. They just don't. Now, okay. Probably the best one out of all these. Okay, there's two. First off, anyways, we do have to go back to the first thing you talk about, the Capital Imperialis. That one I'm kind of okay with, even though it's got a ridiculous look to it. It does look like it was made by Jawboys. But the thing I like about it, though, is that it's not designed to be like on the front lines. This is like a moving fortress that holds all your people that are in charge. And it's heavy enough, if I understand right, Euxin. It's heavy enough, anyways, that any blasts of artillery or Titans or anything like that, anyways, isn't really going to affect it. Yes?
Well, not for a while, and by the time that they're standing there long enough to actually do the damage, in most cases, they'll be blown away by the behemoth cannon. So,
right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and the behemoth came in. I mean, he didn't really mention this, but it's got a fairly long range to it, correct?
Well, the fact that it can fit 4 Leman Russes inside it means it better have.
I mean, quite frankly, it reminds me of from Terran 42, the rail guns the Germans made that didn't ever really work substantially well, but that was just simply because it was on a rail. This is something, anyways,
Like the
that
guns of Navarone.
can trundle through. What's that?
Like the guns of Navarone, those size things.
The guns of Navarone. I actually don't know about that.
Yeah.
What are you talking about?
I don't know. Anyways, I know what you're talking about.
Okay. Now, when you're talking about these giant tanks, I mean, they don't seem to move very well. That's the huge problem I have with them, especially the sword storm. I mean,
Shadow Sword.
or Shadow Sword.
Mind you, the Storm Lord, I assume, could actually move significantly faster
Okay.
than the Shadow Sword, but that's because it doesn't have the volcano cannon, so it doesn't have anything that's constantly trying to charge.
But the concept that the Shadow Storm, anyways, it's a Titan killer.
Shadow Sword.
Shadow Sword, right. The thing is that first off, anyways, it doesn't move very fast. But it's also very, very big. So everything, anyways, on the battlefield is going to see this thing rumbling along. And then when it goes to actually fire and try to kill the Titan, it has to stop.
Right. And then it has to restart.
Once it fires. Okay, maybe I'm missing something here, but it just seems like that is a stupid concept, anyways, for a Titan killer. Is it just the concept that because Titans are so large, they just don't see this large tank? Or, I mean, because to me, anyways, any massive tank and you've got a Titan rolling in, anyways, I mean, that's going to be like a primary target.
Right.
I don't get this whole concept of. I mean, the only thing I can think of it, anyways, is they're like sneaky, like they got camouflage on them or something. But even after
I can see, for example, if this was like, it might be effective if it's like in an urban area, and so it just sat there and then turned off its engine and waited.
Sure, that would work, but that would require like a particular situation. This tank, anyways, it's used as a Titan killer. So that means that it should be used in all situations.
Right.
I mean, I just don't.
I
don't understand how this works.
Backstab weapon is what it seems more like.
It does, but it doesn't seem like it has the capability to backstab something. That's the problem I have with it. It's like, yes, this is the perfect backstabbing weapon. It sneaks onto the battlefield and then shoots its gun. It kills the Titan, and then it slowly sinks away. But from what you've described, anyways, this thing isn't incredibly sneaky. It's huge. And everything, anyways, on the battlefield is going to look at this and go, yeah, kill that. So how does this work? I don't... does it have, like, camouflaging capabilities to it, or...
No.
No?
No. I guess technically it probably has smoke launchers.
Yes, speaking of smoke
what's
launchers,
that moving cloud down there? I don't know.
This thing is like the size of a small city. So, I mean, it's
not the size of a small city.
Okay, so
Not
it's the size of about 8 Optimus Primes moving together.
It's
so, I mean, that's very large. And it's moving across the battle.
So it's like between 2 and 4 Leman Russ size. It isn't like...
It's huge. That is a big, pardon my French, that is a big-ass tank. I mean, one of the problems, anyways, a good example of this is World War II. One of the problems the Tigers had was they were quite large. And as soon as they entered the battlefield, everybody went, okay, we need to kill that because it's so big and so powerful. So This sister battle tank, anyways, is the Baneblade, is doing the same thing, except for it's not fast. It can't camouflage. And, and the only thing that it's there to actually shoot is Titans. So everything is just peppering this thing on the battlefield. It's not like you can get the guy out anyways from the top and go, hey, guys, stop shooting us. We're not here for you. We're here for the big guy. And everybody goes, oh, my bad. And they just stop shooting at it.
Right.
I don't get how this could work. Please tell me how this could work. Because I just don't see it.
Yeah, I don't know. It's the size of basically the width is about 2 Leman Russes. So
it's a big ass tank. Yes.
Yeah.
We've established that. I don't understand how this works. Now getting to okay, so apparently you can't answer me on that.
No.
The Baneblade. So the Baneblade, anyways, is about the same size, right?
Yes.
So while the Leman Russ is relatively slow, it's also fairly small compared to the Baneblade, correct?
And well, like I just said,
it's like 2 by 3 wide of Leman Russes. Yeah. So while the Leman Russ, it kind of makes a little bit more sense because you've got hundreds of these things anyways moving towards you on a battlefield. When you get a Baneblade, on the other hand, anyways, first off, it's probably the only one there.
Yeah.
Maybe you have 2 of them. Maybe. But at the same time, anyways, first off, it moves, from what you described anyways, it moves slower than the Leman Russ, which is saying something. Yeah. And secondly, anyways, yes, it's got all this firepower, but all you need to do is just launch a few fighters anyways overwards in the air and drop a bunch of bombs on it, and it's done. So, I mean, honestly, when you look at Terran 42, the fall of the tank, I mean, we still use tanks today, or they still use tanks today, but the fall of the tank is the concept that you have air support. You have things that can move at 500 miles an hour with a payload that can destroy the biggest of tanks. So they have this, in the 40K as well. So how does this even work?
Well, apparently the Imperium never got that memo.
I mean, you take, like, for instance, okay, so the top tank, we kind of discussed this anyways. The top tank of Terran 42 right now is the M1 Abrams, right? Okay, or it's something similar to that. I'm sure people will comment and they'll be like, well, no, it's this particular tank. But the M1 Abrams is kind of the standard of modern tank. It can run on a desert road or anyways. It's 60 miles an hour and fire doing that. It is fast for a tank. For a tank. Mind you. What you're doing anyway, not what you're doing, but what the Imperial Guard is doing is they're going, you know, we can do one better. We're going to make this slower than our regular tank. And we're just going to make it so large and so powerful that everything anyways on the battlefield is going to go, you know what? Let's kill that first. How does it work? I mean, this doesn't make any sense.
The idea behind it is, first of all, they'd have to have something that can punch through the armor.
Right. Like bombs from a plane. I mean, it just goes swooping overhead. I mean, I've seen it before. It goes swooping overhead. They just drop bombs and poof, it's gone. I mean, we figured it out. I mean, I just don't get it. How do these? I mean, don't get me wrong. I will say that the super tanks like the Baneblade have some really cool weapons that are attached to them that can, if something is close enough to them anyways, it will just destroy everything in front of it.
Right.
But it's got to, first off, it's got to get there, A. And B, once it gets there, it is so big that everything is going to look at that thing and go, we need to kill that first. It doesn't tactically make sense, and it doesn't strategically make sense. So please, Yuxin, for the love of Mkulu, Tell me, how does this work?
Like I said, one of the things is that if they don't have air support, it's very hard to kill one of these things. Like they mentioned, yes, if you have something like, for example, a Vanquisher, well, there aren't that many Vanquishers out there.
Could a Basilisk kill it? It's moving very slow. So a Basilisk, anyways, on the other side goes, okay, aim and fire. Yes, a Basilisk could kill this thing. Artillery could kill this thing because it moves like a centipede. So, sorry, not centipede.
It isn't that slow.
It's slow. You said it was slower than Leman Russ. Leman Russ goes 18 miles an hour. 18.
Yeah, it can go up to 43, though.
It can go up to 43, but yeah, it normally doesn't. And we said, anyways, the Baneblade goes slower than that. So let's say, anyways, it goes from 10 to 30 if it's doing well. I just don't understand how this would work. I mean, unless the only way I can think of that this could possibly work is that the armor is really that strong. So strong, anyways, that it would, and maybe not armor, but like, what are those shields that they use on like fortresses?
Void shields?
Yeah, like void shields. They adapt void shields on Baneblades so that things that fly overhead with bombs with high payloads can't actually hurt this thing. That's the only thing I could think of, in which case it's a moving fortress, which okay, yeah, that is very devastating, but it doesn't sound like it has those. So it's just it's just working on the thickness of the plate of its armor, which it ain't gonna work. I don't know, Yuxin. This sounds like an engineer, anyways, had a brilliant idea, and then the guy in the field said, this is terrible, and nobody listened to him. That's really what it sounds like. But I don't know. Please give me a little bit of hope for those Baneblade people. Is there anything, anyways, that's going for them at this point?
Well, other than what I mentioned, the fact that they would have to have something to puncture it to begin with. And yes, you mentioned Basilisk, but how often is a Basilisk on the field going, I think there's a tank moving. Maybe we should try to hit that instead of using them for, what they're normally used for, which is siege bombardment.
I'm just saying artillery, Yuxin. And yes, the enemy does tend to use artillery. So, I hate to say it, but on that sad note, we're out of time. Now, I hope you enjoyed this box. So much so that you join us next week for a discussion of some of the more famous regiments of the Imperial Guard, as well as some of their notable characters. Like, I believe, anyways, next week, Yuxin, we will be talking about the Catashans. Or, no.
Yeah, Catashans. Catashans. That's how I pronounce it, anyways.
Okay.
Catechins. No, Catechins. That's
oh, no.
You're the one You're the one who kept calling them Catashans.
Oh, that's my bad.
Catechins.
Catechins,
like the Catechin devils. The Catechins.
Yes. The Catechins, including, like, for instance, Sly Marbo.
No, we aren't talking about
part of the Catechins. Yes, I will not talk about Sly Marbo as much as you didn't talk about Alexis Pollux.
No, we aren't talking about it at all. Well, if you're still listening to this, if you could be so kind as to push that subscribe, like, or follow button. And if you wish to help us expand our work on 40K lore, by all means, support us by joining our membership program on our YouTube channel, Tales of Asharaka.
Have a great day. And as always,
until next time, this is Ekthar.
And Yuxin.
Signing off.